Outside of Pat Fryermuth, Penn State returns all of its skill position production from 2020. Good time to hand things over to an effective and experienced offensive coordinator. We got Tim Aiden on the line from Black Shoe Diaries on SB Nation to help us break it down and the personnel moves that go along with this time of the year for all the big major teams in regards to transfer portal and NFL draft. Tim, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, Mark. Hopefully, with all the changes that have happened on the coaching staff and also via announcements of players staying and who Penn State's got in the transfer portal, that 2021 will make 2020 look like some horrible, distant memory that we can successfully erase from our minds.
In a number of ways. Mike Yurcich has a pretty impressive resume in 2020 and going back several seasons. Ohio State, Oklahoma State, and most recently Texas. Now he takes over for Kirk Ciarrocca, who didn't have much of a stay there at Penn State, which is the one season.
Nobody in the Penn State fan base saw it coming. I mean, personally, the day they announced it, I remember just waking up and just doing the usual checking on my phone, which I'm sure you or a lot of people watching this broadcast tend to do first thing in the morning, and going to the Lions 24/7 board. I see an announcement saying Mike Yurcich hired as offensive coordinator and Ciarrocca's out, and I had to do a double take, thinking like, wait, did I fall back asleep and just dreaming really hard? And like, no, that actually happened. Franklin definitely did a heck of a job keeping that completely under wraps from any kind of message board rumor, speculation, or the media getting a hold of it before they officially announced it. But yeah, it's a very, very shocking move, but it also sends a message. James Franklin, he's serious. He's not playing around. And I mean, I don't say this to disparage Kirk Ciarrocca. I think he's a good offensive coordinator, but I think Franklin looks at the skill players he's got, particularly, especially with Jahan Dotson coming back, and of course, the bevy of running backs in the state, Noah Cain and Devin Ford, Kevon Lee, Kai Holmes, and newly added from the transfer portal, Baylor's John Lovett. He's got a lot of skill guys to work with, and to have a guy like Mike Yurcich, who is probably best known for his 6 years as Mike Gundy's offensive coordinator at Oklahoma State, where his teams averaged 38 points and 478 yards of total offense per game. And I do remember just over the years watching Oklahoma State football when he was running the offensive show there, and they were kind of fun to watch. I think I'm hopeful with what he has to work with at Penn State that we can see fireworks similar to what we saw when Joe Moorhead was calling the shots, several years ago in Happy Valley. So definitely brings a jolt of optimism to this upcoming season, which I may not have felt before this was announced. So it's good to have some hope in regards to that. I think it's also a move that was done with the idea of trying to attract an elite quarterback, an elite blue chip quarterback, which is something Penn State has had trouble getting in the James Franklin era. Of course, he inherited Christian Hackenberg, who, while he was a 5-star quarterback as a recruit, obviously didn't, end up performing like one. But he hasn't been able to recruit, say that, that Trevor Lawrence type guy is someone who can really just take your team to the next level. I feel like this day and age in college football, unless you're, say, Alabama, for example, where they've just stacked with blue chip skill players out the wazoo, you can get a guy like maybe Mac Jones, who I think is a solid quarterback. Like he may not be Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields count, but he's a solid quarterback of his own. But if you lack that kind of surrounding talent, though, then you need like a guy like a Lawrence or a Fields, someone who can carry the team on your shoulders. And I think that's the idea behind getting Yurcich to, get that kind of guy who can take Penn State to get him over the hump, beat Ohio State, or absent of that, at least don't lose to anyone other than Ohio State, and sneak into that fourth playoff spot with just Ohio State being your lone blemish. So there's multiple reasons for that. Also, it sounded like he wanted Yurcich last year when there was an opening, when Ricky Ronnie left to take the Old Dominion coaching job, but Texas beat him to the punch, and so Kirk Shiraka ended up being the one hired. So otherwise, it's hard for me to see him making such a, for lack of a better term, savage move like this. After just one season where Kirk Shiraka, to be fair to him, didn't have a chance to really get a normal offseason to install his offense. So it'll be interesting to see how things go this coming year, especially, is there going to be a spring football practice? What it's going to look like? Will Yurcich have more of a chance to put a system in place that Kirk Shiraka didn't? Still a lot of unanswered questions, but I guess going back to what I was saying before, it definitely gave the fan base a jolt of hope, which otherwise we didn't have.
Oklahoma State hasn't been the same offensively since Yurcich left. They've been a better defensive team, and that's the way they won their games, as opposed to the high-flying offense that you outlined. As you mentioned, 38 points per game, 478 in total yardage averaged while Yurcich was in Stillwater. All right, the NFL draft. We both kind of went through the offensive skill position players between the two of us at both wide receiver and running back in regards to all that talent coming back, other than Pat Freiermuth, who should prove to be the next successful tight end at the next level coming from Penn State. So how do we stand in terms of NFL draftees, who's declared, who's coming back, in terms of those people that where there was a question as to whether they would go or stay?
So Pat Freiermuth we've already touched upon. I guess the other big name that's declared is Jason Oweh, defensive end. There was many people. I know even before the season started, he was being mocked as a late first round pick. And even though we had, by his a disappointing season, which he didn't garner a single sack, he still continues to be mocked in the late first round. And, frankly, if I'm sure he got feedback too from, draft advisory boards who probably told him something similar. If you're being projected as, first round pick, even if, say, your season didn't go so well and, you don't feel like you have anything left to prove at the college level, I fully understand him moving on, getting paid. I think especially when it goes for the combine workouts, I'm sure there will be scouts that will be salivating at his raw athleticism. I guess something to keep in mind with Oweh is he only started playing football about halfway through high school. So, he's only been playing maybe about 4 years of football at this point. He was originally a basketball prospect. So he made the switch to football about halfway through high school. So he's still kind of raw, but, perhaps the right team takes him. They can develop him, and, he can have a nice lengthy career as a pass rush specialist in the league. So, I wish him all the best. Other names that have declared, we can touch on the broad before the hit record. Michael Mennett and Wolf Rice from the offensive line, both were fifth-year seniors coming into last season, and they, of course, with the NCAA's blanket waiver due to COVID, they were given an extra year if they wanted it, but they understandably both decided to move on to give the NFL a shot. Same goes for Shaka Toney, and he was in the Lamont Wade, both seniors. Toney, of course, being the other defensive end opposite Oweh. He had a pretty solid season from defense. And, Lamont Wade, who of course was much maligned for getting burned a lot by opposing receivers, but, he did save his best performance for last against Illinois in the season finale, especially when he took that kickoff for 100 yards to the house. So, for him to go off a bang like that was good on his part. So we'll see if he ends up getting drafted or if he gets picked up as a free agent. So those are the guys that are headed to the NFL. And I think perhaps more importantly, team received some good news from a few key players who are coming back for one more go around. And so perhaps most notable is wide receiver Jahan Dotson, who is emerged as the team's top receiver this past year, had 884 yards and 8 touchdowns in just in just 9 games. If I would imagine in Yurcich's offense, playing a full 12, 13 game season, he should, if he stays healthy, he should have no problem surpassing 1,000 yards in 2021. So it'll be really exciting to see it. And really more importantly, it helps bridge a gap between him and the younger guys like Parker Washington, Keandre Lambert-Smith, and we're both rising sophomores. And also, some of the incoming freshman receivers too, who might see the field, like Lonnie White or Liam Clifford. So it's definitely a huge boon to the offense that Jahan Dotson comes back. So, and it gives Sean Clifford a target he's become very familiar and comfortable with, especially with Pat Freiermuth now gone. So that's definitely critical. Another critical returnee, Jaquan Brisker, safety. He made a starting debut this past year, and he was really starting to shine towards the latter half of the season. And Penn State fans were hoping he would maybe come back one more full season and just put it all together. And that's precisely what seems to be in the cards for him. Tariq Castro Fields also, I guess, somewhat surprisingly, maybe not too surprising, because he did miss his share of playing time this year. He's coming back for a 6th season at cornerback, so he gives the secondary even more depth and experience. Him and Brisker coming back both give the secondary a lot more depth and experience than they otherwise would have coming into 2021. So those were all big returnees for Penn State. And just to further touch upon that, maybe not just returnees, but from the transfer portal, which starting this year, James Franklin and staff have actually been using it to bring in guys, been much more aggressive, trying to fill in gaps where maybe due to recruiting misses or just guys not panning out or leaving early for the draft, or transferring, what have you. They've found some key guys to fill in the gaps. I think most notably Arnold Ebiketie, defensive end out of Temple, who's grad transferring from there. Derek Tangelo, also on the D line, a defensive tackle out of Duke. Not sure he'll be starting, but at the very least he'll be a key part of the rotation. So they definitely needed some depth on the D line, and Tangelo and Ebiketie give them that. Perhaps some of the bigger wins, which I touched upon, I think earlier, was John Lovett out of Baylor. Now he didn't quite have a productive season under first-year coach Dave Aranda, but he was a beast under Matt Rule, and that's a huge grad transfer pickup for Penn. He's actually he brings that combination of size and speed, which Journey Brown had, and actually, from my understanding, is that he and Journey Brown were in the same recruiting class, 2017, and the last running back spot was ultimately offered to Brown instead of him. But he was a guy that Penn State had established a recruiting relationship with, and it's come full circle now. That's the thing with these grad transfer guys too. These are guys that Penn State. Same thing with Derek Tangelo, and I'm not sure about Ebiketie, but I would imagine the same with him. But these are guys that Penn State was seriously looking at when they were high school recruits, and even if ultimately they may not have offered them, or if they had a higher priority guy that was offered and who committed first, these kinds of things can come full circle, and we're seeing it now with the transfer portal. And I think you'll see them more in the future when the one-time transfer rule gets approved by the NCAA. When kids can transfer and just not have to sit out a year automatically. So I mean, even if you don't end up getting these guys straight out of high school, you may find yourself 3 to 4 years down the road. If you need to fill a position? There's a position of need you got to fill, and a certain guy that you were going after previously becomes available for the portal. You got a good shot at them. So they were definitely huge pickups. The other name I needed to mention was John Dixon, cornerback out of South Carolina, was one of the better defensive players for Will Muschamp down there. He obviously left with the coaching staff change. So that's another huge boon to the secondary. Frankly, it makes me feel pretty bullish about the secondary going into this season.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down Penn State courtesy Tim Aiden. You can join him on Black Shoe Diaries, SB Nation. Just putting a cap on all of that information concerning guys leaving, guys coming back. When you look at Owe leaving with 63 tackles for his career, 13 and a half tackles for loss and 7 sacks. Shaka Toney, as you mentioned, with 111 total tackles. That's over the course of his career, 28 and a half tackles for loss and 20 sacks. And Lamont Wade, as you well know, Tim, you know these guys better than just about anyone. Lamont Wade played a ton of football at Penn State, 153 career tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss and 3 sacks. Jahan Dotson, you already alluded to this. I just want to emphasize this. 9 games played, 884 yards. It doesn't take a mathematician to see that he averaged 100 yards per game. So if he plays the full season, the 12 games, the 13 postseason games, he's racking up some serious numbers. Bricker, third on the team in tackles with 57. And Castro Fields has had a nice career playing a lot of football for Penn State, although he missed quite a bit of action this past season. And
Mark,
love it. Wow.
Don't mean to interrupt, but I did neglect to mention Rasheed Walker returns at offensive line as well. That was the other big announcement of who's coming back. And that's huge for the offensive line, because I think a lot of people thought that he would maybe declare for the draft after this year. So to get him back for one more year is huge. So sorry about that, Rasheed. But
absolutely. And Lovett productive at Baylor, as you mentioned, 1,800 yards, 5.1 per carry, 17 touchdowns, caught 29 passes out of the backfield as well. So it's the new world in college football, where it's like free agency and you got to keep up with it every day. There's just guys going back and forth all over the place. And it's going to be up for these coaches to not just recruit. That almost becomes the NFL draft, the recruiting. And then you don't want to build a roster on transfers, but you can come up with some key components here and there to kind of fill out what you want to accomplish that season and get maybe 2 or 3 standout guys and fill out the roster that way. So very interesting there. On the recruiting front, as we talk about the NFL draft comparison, first Wednesday of February, of course, most of the work has been completed, but there's a name or two out there that possibly Penn State could grab here in the next few weeks.
Right. So there could be a couple more surprises that we may not be aware of, but the name to keep an eye out on for a possible February signing is George Rooks, 4-star defensive tackle out of Jersey City, New Jersey, St. Peter's Prep. He's sounds like it's a Penn State, Michigan, Boston College battle for him. Which it sounds like to me, Penn State and Boston College are really the top 2 for his recruitment. And it sounded like he was originally going to commit in December, but then held off. I think he took a visit to Penn State, or was going to take a visit to Penn State. But from my understanding, Penn State would be the favorite if he were to announce today. And so we'll see if that holds true when he does announce. But that's if there's going to be at least one guy signing in February. Your best bet is George Rooks, and he would be certainly a nice addition to the defensive line.
Good stuff. Tim Aiden, Black Shoe Diaries, joins us on a regular basis to break down Penn State football. So for the deep dive, head on over to SB Nation. Again, it's blackshoediaries.com. Tim, we always appreciate you stopping by, breaking down Penn State football. You're riding a 4-game winning streak. I know that 2020 didn't feel too good, but when it was all said and done, of course, you head toward 2021 as most likely, again, the second best team in the division. So it should be interesting to see what else happens, and we'll be in spring practice before you know it.
Sure thing. Let's hope we get a more normal-ish off season in 2021 and a more normal regular season after that. So,
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Tim.
all right, thanks, Mark.